So I have a previous video called 40 Before 40 where my goal was to read these 40 books before I turned 40. I've still got almost 2 years and I've read 10 of them and I just want to cover them in this video, and I also want to talk about books that I should probably take off the list. Not because they're bad, but I don't really have an interest in reading them the more I think about it. So let's get into the 10 of them that I have read, and I'll just give brief summaries for each one and talk about whether or not I enjoyed it. In no particular order, we will start with Startide Rising. I talked about Startide Rising in my last video. It is fantastic. One of those S-tier science fiction novels. The book is about the human race in the not too distant future where we have uplifted apes and dolphins. Because we've done that, we are part of this galactic collection of civilizations that have uploaded other species. So we're kind of on the top of the totem pole, but we're at the bottom of the top of the totem pole. We kind of jumped ahead, and this book is about a dolphin ship that just has a few humans on it. They discovered something they shouldn't have, and now they're hiding from these other civilizations that are trying to take them out so they can get a hold of what the Earthlings found, because there's a very good chance it is a technology of the progenitor race that started it all, the one that began uplifting other species. The book is crazy. The world building is incredible. There's just so much going on. If you want to hear me repeat these things along with some other stuff, you can check out my last video, my 10 favorite science fiction books of all time. But let's just keep going. When I was trying to figure out what to read and when to read it, I did a lot of looking at my shelves, and one of the things that just kept staring at me was a very nice book that I picked up a while back, and that was Carnival of Crime, the best mystery stories of Frederic Brown. I made a video about Frederic Brown. You can check that out too. I made like a introduction to him and why he's an important writer. He's one of the best mystery writers of his era. He's one of the best science fiction writers of his era. He could do it all. And Carnival of Crime is a curated collection of his crime short fiction. It's very good. I enjoyed the introduction. I liked how both editors discussed why they put these stories in there and why some stories aren't in there. If you like crime fiction, you really need to check out Frederic Brown. This is a very good way to check it out, but the book is not cheap. It's pretty rare. It's from Southern Illinois University Press. I don't think it's ever been reprinted, so good luck finding a copy. I just happened to see one when I was at my favorite bookstore, but the stories in it are pretty easy to find. I'm going to grab my copy real quick so I can show you it. See, this thing's nice and clean. Got this goofy Joker looking dude on the front holding a revolver incorrectly. This has 23 stories in it, and some of the good ones are Little Apple Hard to Peel. It reads like a Stephen King story. It's just unsettling, and it's a small town. It just ticks all the boxes for what you would expect in a Stephen King short story. A Little White Lie is pretty good. I had a lot of fun with it. Don't Look Behind You is not bad. Cry Silence isn't bad. I mean, pretty much everything in here is really good, and it also includes Nightmare in Yellow, like the whole thing, which is a pretty good mystery story. Honestly, you can find almost all of these on like archive.org or something. If you just look up Frederic Brown short fiction, you will find copies you can read for free. You can find very, very cheap ebooks on pretty much every site that sells ebooks. So if you want to give them a chance, you could look this up and see what stories are listed in it and then just go read them for free, or you can hunt down a copy if you just want a cool, rare hardcover. The next one is Guardians of the Flame by Joel Rosenberg, the First Lit RPG series. I call it the First Lit RPG series because while Quag Keep by Andre Norton was the First Lit RPG book, it didn't get a sequel until the 2000s, but the Guardians of the Flame series had like 10 books come out within like 15-year time period between Quag Keep getting published and the sequel getting published. So it's the first series, even though Quag Keep happens to get a sequel later on. Anyways, doesn't really matter. The books aren't very good. The first one is very edgy, and through most of it, I was just thinking, why am I still reading this? And then there's this awful scene with this woman being assaulted off screen, but the characters can hear it, and it is super cringe, and I hate it. And using someone's suffering like that, especially in a trope that should be dead in the fantasy world, to further the plot was just stupid. And what makes it even worse is the following scene is one of the best, most uplifting scenes I have ever read about a person with a physical disability. The book is jarring. You'll get whiplash from how bad it is when it's followed up by something that is amazing. The whole time I was reading the first book in the series, I kept thinking, this is just not good. Why am I going through this? And by the time I finished the book, I was like, wow, that ending was a banger. I loved it because you get to see these people who get sucked into this RPG world go back to the real world. And when they come back, they have changed. They are hard asses. They don't play around. And they did what they had to do to get back into the fantasy world to save someone. It was crazy. And then I read the second book and I'm like, oh, this is all garbage. So if you want to read them, you can. I don't suggest it. Yes, the covers are very cool, as you've seen the whole time I've been talking about this, but maybe read something else, like Dungeon Crawler Carl if you're looking for lit RPG. And beyond that, I don't know, because I haven't read any other lit RPG. All right, let's move on to a good one that I have a video about. Chronicles of Amber by Roger Zelazny. When I made the video, I had already read the first 5, but I wanted to read all 10. Well, I have read all 10, and the second half of the series is very mid, exceptionally mid. There are things I like about it. I think that the first Merlin novel is very good. Like Trumps of Doom is a very good book, but what you have to keep in mind is it's a soap opera. So let's talk about the series as a whole. Chronicles of Amber is Roger Zelazny's fantasy series where the rulers of Amber are the ones that essentially control reality. Amber is the center of the multiverse, and the lords of Amber and their bloodline can travel to different realities, including ours. And so it's like this weird mix of portal fantasy and crazy multiverse stuff. It allows Zelazny to shine. He gets to do whatever he wants in it, and that's what you want when Zelazny is telling you a story. The first 5 books, amazing. All of them are bangers. Each one has a different style to it. One is portal fantasy, the next is crazy sword and sorcery, and then you have all this political intrigue. And those first 5 are the Corwin series, and then the second 5 are the Merlin series, and Merlin is Corwin's son. It's all soap operas. There's, oh, this guy betrayed me because of this, and this guy betrayed me because of that, and then they didn't actually betray me. What they did was they pretended to betray me so they could befriend me later and help me out, and it's a bunch of drama. If you like soap operas, you really like it. If you like the first Amber series and you want more Amber, you will like these, just not nearly as much, but it is great to go back. And one of the cool things about the second half of the series is Zelazny pushes the philosophy and the kind of technology underneath the magic even further. So that is fun. But yeah, Chronicles of Amber, I'm so glad I read them. I will be reading everything Zelazny's ever written. There was a very good reason this was on my 40 before I turned 40, because I desperately wanted to finish the series because I love it so much. I don't think that the second half of the series really lessens my overall score because I just like being in Amber so much, but they aren't as good, like people say, but I don't think they're as bad as most people say. Now, this next one is completely different than everything else on this list, and that is The Bear Went Over the Mountain. It is about the tactics of the Russian military in their invasion and occupation of Afghanistan. You have like that 10 years of them fighting the Mujahideen. The book is good, and I've said this before, but I think that it is just like On Guerrilla Warfare by Mao. The commentary is better than the actual substance of the book. So the way the book is structured is you have a brief introduction from the editors, and then you have the actual story, and it's a story because it's a report, a battle, or how this combat went down between Soviet forces and Afghan forces. And at the end, they have 2 different versions of kind of what they should have done to do better. You have someone from the Soviet side and then someone from like the West. And it's really fascinating. Their commentary is better than the actual action. You really don't learn a lot from the action until it kind of gets translated, or maybe that was a me thing because I have no military experience, so some of it probably flew over my head. But I understand like tactics, and I've read a lot of military manuals on fighting, so I would consider myself more than just a layman. And even then I was like, this is just okay. So nobody else probably should read that. I think there's only like 10 people that have reviewed it on Goodreads, so nobody has read it. But if you're into that kind of thing, I can recommend it if you want something that covers a time and a lot of combat that there's not a lot of books about. I mean, yeah, there are books about the Soviets in Afghanistan, but there's not a lot of books about how they fought during that war. So that makes it pretty interesting. All right, this next one. This was on my list because I had heard so many good things about it, and it ended up being one of the best historical fiction books I've ever read, and that is When the Lion Feeds by Wilbur Smith. I desperately want to pick up a first edition, first printing. I know where one is. I just need to justify the expense. Maybe I'll get it for Christmas. When the Lion Feeds is a epic historic novel where you follow Sean Courtney of the Courtney family that ends up being this huge series of novels. There's like 20 something or more by Wilbur Smith and then by co-authors later on. Sean Courtney is like a rake. He ends up getting chased out of his family home. The book starts off weird though, because initially you're looking at the POV of both brothers, Sean and Garrick, and then after Sean gets kicked out, you never go back to Garrick's POV, which is weird because it sets you up thinking you're going to see these two brothers in this long story about them, and then the novel ends up being Sean's life, which ends up being okay because Sean is a very interesting character, and I loved seeing the way he changed over time. And I love that this is Wilbur Smith's love story to Africa, like the land itself. He was obviously in love with where he lived and where he grew up. This has very little baggage you would expect from a South African historical novel. I find it very funny that the book was banned in South Africa, and I joked in my wrap-up where I talked about this that I think that one of the reasons it got banned in South Africa was because Wilbur Smith treated Black Africans so well in it. I really like the book. I think that it is very good. Sean Courtney is wonderful to follow, and if you love reading historical fiction that just makes you feel like you are in the beautiful places they describe, there's nothing better than this. Well, maybe Lonesome Dove is better, but I'm not saying this is Lonesome Dove good, but it's somewhere between good epic historical fiction and Lonesome Dove, like toward the Lonesome Dove side. I really enjoyed it. And I didn't really talk about much beyond the beginning. It's about Sean Courtney making his way through life and booms and busts and just everything that goes on when he's trying to make a name for himself, get rich or die trying. It's very good. It definitely deserved to be on this list, and it probably deserves a place in like my top 10 favorite historical fiction novels, and you'll probably see it on that list when I make a video like that. Now next we have Impresario of Texas, which is a biography of Stephen F. Austin, and if you live outside of Texas, you probably don't care, and that's fine. I loved it. It was recommended to me by one of my teachers when I was in college. He was an instructor at my college while also getting his PhD at TCU. So the man knew a little bit about Texas history. That wasn't his specialty, but he told me about Impresario of Texas because the author was one of his peers and he said was a good guy, and his last name is Cantrell. You'll see it on the screen. Sorry, my brain is not working right this second. Anyways, this is a biography of Stephen F. Austin. It is very good. The author is Greg Cantrell. You get to follow Stephen F. Austin's life, and Cantrell does a really good job of putting you in Stephen F. Austin's shoes. Not so much in his mind, but you're in his shoes where he was at the time. And this is weird to say, but the prose in the book is very good. It's not a compelling narrative like a Tom Holland book, but he does a really good job of just setting up every chapter in a way that just flows almost like fiction, and I really enjoy it. I think he does a good job of showing the actual Stephen F. Austin and not the glorified one that's like a demigod here in Texas. So I really appreciate that. He has another book that I'm going to read hopefully next year called The People's Revolt, Texas Populists and the Roots of American Liberalism. That's going to be fun. Of course, that one's going to be a lot more politically charged, so I'm looking forward to that. He also has a biography about the first Black congressman that came out of Texas, which was during Reconstruction. Greg Cantrell's awesome. Speaking of Tom Holland, I read Pax by Tom Holland, his most recent Roman history book. Tom Holland writes amazing books. He is such a great storyteller, and he really throws you into the history and entertains you while helping you get a grasp on ancient Rome. You don't have to read his previous stuff to enjoy Pax. Pax is, as the little subtitle says on the cover, War and Peace in Rome's Golden Age. He covers all of the emperors during this golden age and how it collapsed. It's good. It's very good. I mean, it's Tom Holland. If you haven't read Tom Holland, you should. If you have even just like a little bit of interest in the Roman Empire, you don't have to be a Romaboo or anything, but if you want to read about the Roman Empire, I highly suggest Tom Holland. The audiobook is narrated by him, which is wonderful. He does a podcast with Dominic Sandbrook called The Rest is History, and so he's very good on a microphone. Been a long time that he's been doing that podcast. He knows what he's doing. He's a good narrator. Most of the time when the authors narrate, I'm like, bro, why are you doing this? Unless you're an actor and I'm listening to your memoir, most of the time, I don't want to hear you. This is one of those exceptions. Definitely give PAX a try. All right, we got two more. One more nonfiction, so let's do this. The last book is insane, and I've talked about it a lot, so you better hold out for that. The Baseball 100, the greatest baseball book ever written. Nothing else comes close. The Baseball 100 by Joe Posnanski is the 100 most important baseball players to have ever played the game. Not necessarily the greatest, they're just the most important to the sport. This initially started during COVID when Joe Posnanski was writing articles, and he would just every week write an article about one of the 100. And then it got turned into this lovely book. If you like baseball at all, you should get this. You don't have to read it in order. You can just pick a player and enjoy their story, because every single player in here gets a little bio kind of about their life, why they were important to baseball, what baseball looked like at the time they were playing. It's magnificent. So Joe Posnanski's criteria was how good were they? How important were they to the league at the time? So of course Jackie Robinson is on there, but he's at 42. You know why? Because that was his jersey number. So they're not necessarily in order of worst at 100 and best at 1. They're a mix of importance and how good they were, and then he kind of played with the numbers a little to put players in certain positions. Like, you know, a player known for their number, they're probably gonna be at their number. It's great. Highly recommend it. Anyone that loves baseball needs to get this. Anyone that kind of likes baseball should get this. Now this last one is A Spectre is Haunting Texas, the book that has shown me that fine line between genius and insanity. This book makes fun of everyone. It does not care. It is Fritz Leiber not punching up or punching down, just punching at everything. It is a satire about the 1960s, but it is in a post-apocalyptic setting where Texas has conquered North America. Everything is Texas. There is greater Texas and lesser Texas, essentially. Texans are these 8 feet tall supermen. They're genetically modified. Everything's bigger in Texas. They have Mexican manservants who they have modified to make shorter and squattier and uglier. And yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. And what happens is a super tall, lean, skeletal guy comes from space because family and a lot of other people just left Earth during the destruction of the planet and live on a space station. Well, he comes back. He's a Shakespearean actor. It's literally Fritz Leiber. Let's just be real. And he's trying to get his land claim back because your boy is broke. What ends up happening is he accidentally starts a revolution to overthrow the Texans. It's very bizarre. He's a sleazeball. At one point, he gets his girlfriend and his side chick high and tries to convince them to be in a polyamorous relationship with him. There are genetically modified Russians that are basically bear men. It just gets weirder than that. He makes fun of everyone. He pulls no punches. It is incredibly offensive and really skirts the line between genius and insanity. I was on a podcast with the guys from E.E.B.S. I will link that in the description, where we discussed this book. In that podcast with the E.E.B.S. crew, Geeks Love Dogs was the MVP. I will put a link to his channel as well. He made me feel like a dummy. He knew way more than I did, and I thought I was pretty well versed in all of that. He gives such a good breakdown of the political climate at the time and context for a lot of the things in the story that would fly over pretty much everyone's head today. I don't recommend this book to anyone because it's just so offensive, and I liked it and I really appreciate the work of genius in it, but also it's hard to swallow all of the insanity, and the last third of the book is garbage. It's so bad. I don't know what happened, but the story basically peters out and stumbles and falls to the finish line in just a terrible way. It's so dumb. So don't read A Spectre is Haunting Texas. I'm glad I put it on this list though, because I had a feeling that it was going to be insane, and it was. Maybe if you're interested in the politics of the 1960s and you took Texas history in junior high, this would be okay to read, but honestly, I don't know. I'm just shocked at how much Fritz Leiber knew about Texas and about the culture in the 1960s and the culture today, because a lot of the things that the Texans do in this story are the same things that turds do today in this state. So don't read it, but if you do, let me know. So that's the 10 that I have finished. I don't regret reading any of them. They did what I wanted them to do. I was either entertained or informed by them, and they were something that I really wanted to get into my brain because I like challenging myself as a reader. And speaking of challenging myself as a reader, some of these I think I've over-challenged myself, or my desire to read some of these has changed. And so let's talk about that, because a few of these I'm probably going to get rid of. The first one being The Gap Cycle. I listed The Gap Cycle and not just the first book in The Gap Cycle by Stephen Donaldson, I have heard some things about this book series that makes me want to not read them, or at least not put myself in a position where I feel obligated to read them in the next few years. I'm going to remove it from the list, and I might just replace it with the Thomas Covenant trilogy, like the first 3 books, because it's still Donaldson, and I read the first chapter of Lord Fowl's Bane, and I really liked what he was doing with it. Yes, I know the character does some monstrous stuff in the book. I've already had that spoiled for me. That's fine. Another one is Magician by Raymond E. Feist. I am interested in it, but when I go to look at the way it's written, it's not for me. I'm a little persnickety when it comes to fantasy. I've realized that as I have started branching out and enjoying more fantasy, like David Farland's Rune Lord series. I got through the first book after DNFing it twice. When I got through it, I was like, dang, this is good. I'm glad I read this. This is better than I thought it was going to be after I quit it a third of the way through 2 times. Then I tried to read the second book in the series, and I was like, this fantasy is not for me. I don't care about lords and ladies, and it being the year 1100 in Western Europe. That's not my fantasy. I don't care. You have so much you can do with fantasy. You have freaking wizards and things that alter reality, and it's not even on our planet. Why are you making Europe 900 years ago? It doesn't have to be. Why is everything Western Europe in fantasy? It just drives me nuts. I'm not saying it needs to be another thing from our world. It could be all of them. Look at the Wheel of Time. It feels a lot like Europe, except that a lot of the swordsmen are using freaking samurai swords. And when the enemy from across the sea comes back in, they're heavily inspired by a lot of military from the Far East, but they're technically coming from the more Western culture. Anyways, I'm starting to ramble. Do more like Wheel of Time, where you mix everything together and it's not just lords and ladies and fiefdoms and all that stupid crap. That is one of the reasons why I'm probably going to get rid of Magician. I've also heard it's a very slow burn. Let's talk about 2 nonfictions I'm probably going to cut. One of them is American Sphinx, which is a biography of Thomas Jefferson. I want to read it. I will read it, but I don't want to feel forced to read it. And the other one is Bloodlands, which is about the atrocities that were committed on the Eastern Front during World War II. Do I need that negativity in my life right now? No. This year has been a lot of reading that brings me joy, or reading that informs me and makes me feel better and happy. I'm currently listening to Patrick Stewart's memoir, Making It So, and it is wonderful. It brings me nothing but joy. Having him read me his life story is just fantastic. And I don't need soul-crushing history in my brain right now. There is a book I read that should have been on this list, and that was A Savage War of Peace by Alistair Horn. I really should have had that on the list instead of Bloodlands. I'm not going to change it now and be like, oh, look, I actually did 11 of my books. So I'm going to leave my other nonfiction that's on here, stuff like the Gulag Archipelago, autobiography of Ulysses S. Grant. But beyond that, I think the list is going to stay as it is. If you want to check it out, you can watch my video about it. I'll link that in the description, of course, because that would be ridiculous if I didn't. Let's talk about some of the stuff on here that I'm really looking forward to getting to, and it will be sooner than later. I am currently reading Playing at the World by John Peterson. That book is dense. That book is way more dense than I thought. I'm like 45% of the way through it. It is the most nitty-gritty history of tabletop RPGs that you will ever read. It is the history of tabletop gaming all the way back to Kriegspiel from Germany. It was developed in the 1800s. It was used by Prussian military officers to train for war. You had little figures on your tabletop, and there was terrain and calculations and random chances. It's a tabletop war game, and that is what created everything up to now to Dungeons and Dragons and everything else. And he covers it. He gets into the history of polyhedral dice. That's how nitty gritty we get. It's crazy. I love it, but it's crazy. I understand now why the book got sorted into 2 volumes, and they made the first volume all the entertaining stuff, which is a history of D&D, and then the second volume all the stuff that makes your brain dribble out of your ears. So yeah, I'm almost halfway done with that. I chip away at that because it's just so much that I don't want to keep bashing my head against the wall until I finish it. When I started that thing, I read it every night for like a week, and every time I finished reading, my Kobo told me I had more time left in it than when I started. I would open it and it'd be like 33 hours until you're finished, and I'd read for an hour and it'd be like 34 hours until you're finished. I'm like, bro, what is happening? But other than that, I'm really looking forward to The Darkness That Comes Before by Baker. I've already tried reading that before. I tried audio. I don't think the audio was the problem. I think it was that my brain wasn't working at the time that I tried it. So I want to give it another chance. That's why it's on the list. I want to get to the Sword of Shannara. Yes, I know it's derivative. No, I don't care, because it's something I've always wanted to read. And so maybe I'll get to that in like January or something. I think I'm going to save Butterfly and the Typewriter until April for April Fools, because I like to read something about a Confederacy of Dunces or John Kennedy Toole during that month, so that'll be perfect. I'm not going to go through the rest of the list because this video would be so long. Do any of you have projects like this where you have a set collection of books you want to read before an arbitrary age? Let me know in the comments. The more I look at this list, the more I'm like, what was I thinking when I made it? But I also look at it and think, I really want to read most of these books, so I definitely got to do it before I turn 40. Thanks for watching, and with that, I'll see you next time.